Welcome everyone to the Rust Munich meetup number 8. This time we have a little bit of a change here. So Bernhard is going to the off and I will do the moderation today. So my name is Sven. Probably you guys know me already. I had also talks here in the past. And today I have the pleasure to announce Ohun, who will introduce us the topic of designing TUI applications in Rust. And I'm pretty looking forward to this exciting topic. And handing the word over to Ohun. Welcome.
Thank you, Sven. It's a pleasure to be here. So today I'll be talking about designing TUI applications in Rust. So first, I'd like to mention a little bit about myself. I'm a free and open source developer since like 2016. I have a lot of projects. I contribute to a lot of projects on GitHub. You can check out my other projects. Check out my open source projects on my GitHub page. I also work as a backend developer. In fact, I'm looking for a job right now. So if you like my projects, just hit me up on LinkedIn. Other than that, I am a daily user of Linux. I am a member of the Arch Linux team. I maintain a handful of packages, Rust packages for Arch Linux, mostly the popular Rust software. And I'm currently studying software engineering. I'm halfway there, and hopefully soon I'll graduate. So other info about me, you can find me on my webpage, orhun.dev. So today's presentation's roadmap is basically I'll talk about the TUIs, what they are, why we should have them on our system, why they are useful for us. Then I'll dive into the Rust side of the things and talk about the libraries that we can use to build TUIs. Also, they are called crates, but you guys already know that. Then we will have a little demo-like implementation. We will build a simple TUI application in Rust using the TUI-rs crate. Then I'll talk about my little open source project, which is a TUI. Then we will have the Q&A session. So let's start with the TUI. So what is TUI? Why it's like why do we hear its name everywhere? Why it's useful? So TUI stands for text-based user interface or terminal user interface. I rather calling them a terminal user interface. It's called text-based because basically we use the terminal buffer, and terminal have a bunch of text that we can show on the screen like a GUI-like way. So it's basically an interface on the terminal. And TUI apps are often considered as CLI applications because they are basically run on the command line. So let me show you a TUI. This is a project of mine. It's called Kmon. As you can see, there are list of logs. There's a table there. Then there's a text that shows the information about the selected item on the table. It has a search input. So it's basically a TUI. Also, it's running on the terminal. So we can say that it's an example for a TUI. So you can check out my project to see more details about this. Other TUI examples, actually these are my favorite crates on the Rust community. I have my own project here, but it's not saying that I like my own project. It's just an example for TUI. So yeah, the first one is Spotify TUI, which is a TUI for basically playing songs from Spotify on your terminal. It's very robust. You can do like a lot of things with this. When you do it will provide an interface to Spotify on your terminal. Like it will support most of the actions that you can do on a Spotify app. So The next one is Git UI or Git TUI. It's rating my Stefan. It's a really good software, I think, for developers. And yeah, it's one of the most popular TUI softwares on the Rust community, I think. And we have Task Warrior TUI, which is a TUI for Task Warrior. Task Warrior is a to-do application that you can take notes, complete tasks, and set your to-dos and stuff like that. And you can perform these operations on your terminal with using the Task Warrior TUI. And the next one is GPG TUI. It's basically a TUI for GNU PG. I'll talk about this later on. Then we have XPLR, which is does not end with TUI, but it's a TUI and it's a file browsing, a really robust file browsing tool for the command line. So in order to build our TUI application, we need a backend for the library. So what I'm saying is basically we will use a library, but those libraries mostly depend on other low-level libraries. So these are the most known most known backends on the Rust community. First one is Termion. It's developed by Redux OS developers. It's very it's a very good library. Then we have Rustbox, which is the Termbox, which is the Rust rewrite of not rewrite, but the Rust adaptation of Termbox. I think I'm not sure, but it's a really good one too. Crossterm is a special one for me because I actually had the chance to dive into Crossterm while writing GPG TUI. Crossterm basically gives you the opportunity of having a TUI running on most of the platforms. It's cross-platform, like the name suggests. Then we have pan curses and n curses. Those are just the bindings for n curses, I think. The n curses is the bindings for the n curses, but I'm not sure about the pan curses. Then we have barrelib terminal -rs. So those were the backends. Then we have the libraries to build TUI apps. First one is TUI-rs, which I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, that we will use this one. It's very popular. It supports a lot of backends and have great widgets to build really good TUIs. We have Cursive. It also supports most of the backends that I mentioned, and it has like other features that other widgets that the other libraries does not have. So it's a very good one too. And Dialogger is basically a TUI building library, but it's mostly based on dialogues, like input dialogues and stuff like that. You can check out these projects as well. As I mentioned, we will use TUI-rs. It's a little bit about this library. It requires Rust C 1.44.0. It supports Termion, Rustbox, Crossterm, and Curses backends, which is enough for us because we will just gonna use one of them. And it has a bunch of useful widgets like block, gauge, sparkline, lists, tables, and you can also create your own widgets, custom widgets, and implement it and integrate it in your app. So those are very useful for building any kind of TUI application. So I have a little implementation here. I'll basically go over the code in this repository here. And if you want to clone this repository and check out the code and run it yourself, you'll see what I'll be talking about more clearly. So basically, this will be our baseline for this presentation. So you can, as I said, you can clone this repository, or I will show how to do things from scratch here. So first thing, I'll create this project. It's not needed if you clone the repository, but I just wanted to show this anyways. I'm sure everyone knows this already, but yeah. So next step is adding the TUI-rs as dependency. This is our cargo.toml file. We have basic package information like name, version, and edition. And then we will add anyhow and crossterm as our dependencies in the dependencies section. Anyhow is just for error handling. You don't have to really know how this works, but it's basically for returning generic errors from the functions. So we don't want to deal with a lot of error types. We will just gonna use anyhow here. Then we will have crossterm because we will need to use some types from the crossterm library itself, apart from the TUI crate. Then we will have TUI crate specified here. It's we will have to like disable the default features and enable the cross-term feature, because I'll use cross-term for this example, and if you don't disable the default features, you will use Termion as default backend. So we will do that, and we are basically ready to go. So our workflow is basically this, but I'll explain it in detail in a second. But I want to say, if you are like, if you have developed your own TUI apps before, maybe you have a different workflow. This is just what I find myself the most convenient. But you can have different workflows. This is just the this is just for the example, and I think it's easier this way. So basically, what we need to do is initialize the terminal, which in this step we will say that the library that we will use crossterm backend, and we will specify our terminal buffer. Then the next step is create an event handler. This is actually not provided by the TUI library. We will have to implement it ourselves, but it's really simple. You can just look at the examples and come up with your own implementation. Then we will prepare the terminal for rendering. In this step, we will have to set the like clear the terminal and hide the cursor, maybe. Stuff like this will happen in this step. Then we will need to start the rendering loop. In this loop, basically what we'll do is render the widgets and handle the events. These two things are needed because when we are rendering the widgets, we will at the same time we will check if there's any key presses or terminal, if the terminal is resized. So we will know what's happening on the terminal, then act based on that. Maybe, for example, if the terminal size is changed, we will have a specific event and we will render another widget. So we will do these comparisons in this render loop. And at last, before we exit the, after we exit the render loop and before we exit the program, we will have to flush the terminal buffer, because we don't want to mess up the terminal by just leaving everything on. I'll explain it in a second. So our workflow is basically this. When we correspond the steps into the code. So first, as I said, initialize the terminal, create an event handler, prepare the terminal for rendering, and start the rendering loop. And we will use a variable for checking if the rendering loop should continue. So when the running variable is false, we will basically exit the loop and flush the terminal. So we can start with initializing the terminal, I guess. All we need is just 2 lines of code. first one is saying that we will use the cross-term backend as our backend, and we will give it the STD error to this backend. Actually, I should mention this. This is required because this is actually depends on your use case. But I had some problems with the STD out before, because, for example, on my GPG TUI app, there's a flag called select, and if you run the app with this flag, it will basically when you press enter while the app is running, it will exit the terminal interface and print out the selected key. So while I was using the std out for the backend, I was using the std out for the output as well. So when you want to integrate this with a like shell script, the both TUI and the program output is using std out, so they might conflict and you might not integrate it with your script. So I recommend using std error for the terminal buffer for the backend, and using std out for the actual program output. So I'm doing that here, giving it the std error. Then I'm initializing terminal by giving it the backend. So next step is actually very crucial, but I won't go into detail here. There are a lot of implementations of the event handler. This is basically a thread that will pull the events from the backend and give out the receiver object to you to handle them. You can check the code for more details. On my repository, there is a event.rs file you can check. Also, there are two examples that I linked here. The first one is from the TUI crate itself, and the second one is from my app GPG TUI, and they are similar implementations. But the TUI one is using Termion, and for my GPG TUI app is using Crossterm. So I recommend checking them based on that. So maybe you want to use Termion, so you can go check out the TUI repository instead of my repository and this example. But it's basically looking like this. You create an event handler and give it a tick rate. This tick rate is basically the refresh rate of the terminal. So you will check if there's an event with 250 millisecond delays. So like I said, it's a custom implementation. You can have a lot of parameters here. Like on my example repository, I just check the events, key inputs in resize and all of that. But you can have like other events like tick. On the tick event, you will receive receive an event when the delay is complete, basically. So next step, let's remember the steps. Yeah, we basically have to prepare the terminal for rendering here on the third step. So it's fairly simple. We just enable the raw mode and enter the alternate screen to have control of the full terminal buffer. Then of course we will execute these commands on the std error, because we are using std error as our terminal buffer. Then we basically hide the cursor and clear the terminal. Very simple steps. And step 4, rendering the widgets. We already had the loop here. All we had to do is use the draw function of the terminal, and this will give us a frame in a closure. And in the closure, we can basically render any widget that the TUI crate supports. In this example, I only render the paragraph, and you can, for example, this paragraph will be shown, will fill the whole terminal, but it will be shown as a little text. So if you want to have like, if you want to split the frame into two, there are there are some uh, widgets called layouts. You can use them to split the terminal to have different widgets. But in this, for this example, I only use a paragraph, and it's only showing a text to us. Uh, all the rendering events, all the rendering steps occur in this closure basically. Then we will have the event handler. Uh, for this, we are using the event handler that we defined before. Uh, for example, I'm just checking the escape key press to exit the TUI program that we have here. I know this match does not look very good. I probably should use a if let for this, but this is just for the demonstration. So you can have multiple events. You can check multiple events here and act based on that. I'm just checking the escape key press and exiting the TUI program if it's pressed basically. Um, if you don't put this here, your TUI program will run forever, and you don't want to do that. Then we will have basically the uh, exit functions here. It's when we set the uh, alternate screen and raw mode here, we will uh, at at the exit we will have to revert this situation, because we will want to use our terminal like it was. If you don't do this, it will probably mess up the buffers and you won't be able to use your terminal like before. So we're just disabling the raw mode, leaving the alternate screen, disabling the mouse capture, and showing the cursor. So I should maybe mention that the mouse capture here, because some of the apps may use this or may not use it. Mouse capture is basically for selecting or using the mouse functions on your TUI. GPG TUI has this thing, has something called like visual mode. It's based on the status of visual mode, it disables or enables the mouse capture. So it makes it easier to select and copy values from the TUI when the mouse capture is enabled. And if disabled, you won't be able to interact with your TUI with your mouse, basically. Then that's it, basically. We're just gonna run the TUI program that we have, and it will say Rust Munich, and it was simple as that. Uh, Next, I'll talk about the GPG TUI. The previous implementation was basic. Uh, when we uh, when we have these tools, these widgets, we can build stuff like GPG TUI or the other projects like Spotify TUI, I don't know, Git UI. These tools are just built based on this on the previous knowledge. So GPG TUI is basically a TUI for GNU PG. It aims to ease the key management operations, like listing keys, exporting them, signing them, and uh, while I think this is a very good step, I think GPG has some advantages over having a TUI as well. So, for example, I'm talking about the GPG CLI. Um, when you want to create a key, it will show you options and it will guide you if needed. And it's basically I think it's a good thing. So I didn't want to lose that. So on GPG TUI, there's something called command line fallback. For certain operations, GPG TUI will basically disable the TUI and run a GPG command, and you will follow these steps to do whatever you want, basically. And It's GPG TUI tries to uh, bring a more interactive approach to key management by having a TUI and the GPG command line tool. So I wanna talk a little bit about the features that we have in GPG TUI. The first thing that I want to talk about is uh, I edit this listing listing appearance because I think the GPG, if you have used GPG before, it has a option called like GPG dash K, and it will basically show list all the keys in the keyring. And I thought that this output was not really readable, so I wanted to have a more like a tree like output here, so everything's shown like with their connections with pipes. And basically on GPG you cannot show all of them with a single command. So right here you can see the signatures, subkeys, and the other user IDs. So I think this is a this makes things easier if you are not familiar with those, and uh, if you want to visualize things a little bit more while using GPG. Then we have the options menu for key management. So on this menu, you can basically perform a lot of actions that you want to do on GPG on your keyring. So for example, like you can sign a certain key, you can copy a certain value, you can edit the selected key, and I want to show you the generating a new key pair. Uh, like I said, the GPG TUI as a command line fallback. So this is one of the examples. When you select generate a new key pair, uh, this will disable the TUI, basically exit the TUI and run the GPG command. In this screenshot, it's not really shown, but after I select the generate new key pair, it will drop me to the shell, and I will have these options. Then when the key is created or the command is executed, if it's failed or if it's successful, the tool will resume where it was, and basically we will have this feature for the convenience, because if I want to create another menu for generating key pairs or editing keys, that will take a lot of time, and maybe that won't be as efficient as this GPG command. So this is basically for that. Another page that GPG TUI has is details page. So on this page you can see your system details, your GPG setup, and you can scroll the key bindings and see their descriptions at the bottom. So this is actually for, again, convenience. So when you first start using GPG TUI, when you press the question mark, this page will pop up, and you will see all the key bindings, your GPG configuration, and the description of the key bindings. So GPG TUI basically consists of two pages. First one is the list of keys, and the details page. It's a very simple program, but I think it's solving a lot of issues for the beginners and the developers. So future goals of the GPG TUI. I added the issue numbers next to the bullet points. So if you want to go and check the issue and see what's needed to be done, or if you want to submit your ideas, you just feel free to do that. But basically, we will need to support signing and encrypting files. This is needed because the GPG TUI is right now supports signing keys, and it has an integration with XPLR, which is a file browser, another TUI application. So I was just thinking to integrate the XPLR with this feature, and basically select a file, then sign it. Um, other goals are integrating with CLI mail clients or TUI mail clients. Uh, then we have to have a menu for editing keys, because I think right now when you press E, it will run the GPG command, and it's not very easy to use this GPG menu. Maybe I think it should be easier to have a TUI for this purpose as well in the GPG TUI. Maybe another menu. Then we will have to. I think we will have a configuration file, and in the configuration file you can change the key bindings and customize the theme in this configuration file. It's like a very important feature that we should have right now, because the key bindings are right now all fixed and you can really change them, and the themes are not really there. They're just two themes, which first one is the basic one, and the second one is the colored, and you can change the colors, so it should be done in the future. And I want to test GPG TUI with physical devices as well, like YubiKey and NitroKey, and see what we can do to make the integration with these devices easier. I'm not sure what to do now, but I'll see. So yeah, feel free to contribute and submit your ideas. And thank you. That was it. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Bernard, I cannot hear you.
Thank you very much for that awesome talk. I have a few questions. There is, like, do you know if there is a way where you can poll for a file descriptor or a Windows API to be notified when the window gets resized, for example, so that you can kind of avoid the 250 millisecond polling but go completely asynchronous?
I think that's possible, but the thing is, sometimes in the TUI you might have dynamic fields, so you will have to redraw the TUI anyways. But for the GPG TUI case, I think there are no dynamic cases in this. Like there are no any animations or anything like that. But yeah, I think it's possible. I might actually look into it, because, like you said, it's re-rendering the TUI like 250 milliseconds, and if you reduce this time, it will really drain your system resources, because rendering is not a easy step for the binary. So yeah, I think it's possible, but it depends on the use case if you want to do it or not. But yeah, I think it should be possible.
I use GPG TUI with quite a few YubiKeys, and at least the listing of keys works pretty well. Like there's, smooth sailing.
Yeah, thanks. I try to keep it like as minimal as possible. Like I don't want to show a lot of information, but at the same time, I want to increase the detail by pressing a key. So when you press tab or while you select the key, it will show other details about the key. So I think it's working pretty well for me as well. I use it like daily. So yeah, at least when I need to receive keys or sign other keys, it's very useful for me.
Yeah, likewise. I find the dialogue-based plain GPG interface rather bothersome to use it more than once a year. Yeah, there are a few questions in Discord. What advantage? There are a few questions in Discord. Why wouldn't I want a TUI version of generate key pair? What advantage does the CLI have? So,
Yeah, good question. I actually actually thought about this before, like while I was building the GPG TUI. The CLI has like I think it's due to like compatibility issues because GPG might change something, and maybe the library might be outdated. I mean, the GPG library might be outdated, so the option on the TUI might be obsolete. So I wanted to use the latest uh, latest options that GPG provides here. But maybe in the future I might add a menu for just generating keys in GPG TUI. But for now, I think it's more convenient and fast to just use the GPG a command line application.
how do you handle window resizes, for example? Like, do you kind of employ these adaptive dynamic layouting techniques on the terminal as well, or do you stick to like this is the layout and you expect a certain minimum width for this to work? Or
Actually, yeah, I get it. Actually, it's very simple. The TUI crate is providing something called the layout and the percentages. So I'm basically saying to the terminal that this widget will be will fill the 50% of the terminal buffer, and the rest is handled by the library basically.
okay, is there a way to kind of restore the state of a TUI widget? That's another question from Discord. So
Do you mean like I mean
I guess the idea is to have multiple tabs, so you can kind of toggle between tabs without much hassle. But I think redrawing is probably the way to go.
Yeah, it's already redrawing when you resize the terminal, so it's not really a problem for you. It's just if you want to handle the resize events yourself, that's fine, but the library just does it for you. When you resize the window or um, when you press a key, all the components will be redrawn, so it's not a problem for you. Or if you just don't do anything, you're just gonna re-render everything. So
yeah. And one question from Sven. How do you write tests for this? Like, how do you simulate input and verify the output?
yeah, it's a good question. I I basically designed the GPG TUI as a library, so all the input is handled by different functions. First, I test these functions if the output is correct. Then I have a test. Actually, TUI has a struct called test backend. So it's providing a simple implementation of a backend just for testing purposes. So you can use this test backend, and it will produce the TUI output like the widgets, but it's text based. So you just basically compare strings. Like it will give you the TUI output, and you will have the expected output, and you compare the strings to see if they match. So I'm using that technique, and I'm also testing all of the functions. And in GPG TUI, there are commands for everything. So it's like Vim commands. I I did this because I wanted to have a generic type of handling things. So if I wanna add a new functionality, I just add a new command, and for that command, I just do whatever this command should do. So first I test these commands and functions, then I test the terminal buffer with the test backend struct.
I guess if you would want to extend that to a crate, you would end up with something like try build for, which does the same thing based on files. So that you have kind of your output buffer to a file compared to a previous run, which is your expected good output. Which is pretty much the same thing, just wrapped in a crate. And what was your initial motivation to write GPG TUI? Was it like, do you use GPG that often that the pain is unbearable?
Yeah, it's another good question. I was just I started writing this at like end of the 2020, and that was the time that I was preparing to apply to Arch Linux, and Arch Linux has this system of the GPG key pairs. So you have to get your key signed in order to push packages to the repositories. So your key should be signed by the master developers. This is checked for every package. So at that time, I was fiddling with GPG. I was just seeing if the keys are signed or what's going on. And I was really bored with the default GPG output, and I wanted to try something new and see if I can create something that will visualize everything. And if I basically needed this tool at the time, and yeah, it worked fine. It really helped me actually, because I was not familiar with the GPG output at the time, and I basically implemented this, and this showed me how to. This basically showed me which key is signed by who, and what are the signatures and stuff like that. I basically learned GPG by implementing this tool at the time.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I have a similar experience with cargo spell check. It's what you need quite often. It sometimes pays off to invest a little bit of time to automate things.
Yeah, exactly.
And reduce the paper cuts. Yeah, cool, awesome. I guess that's it for now. If you have any further questions, I'll still be in Discord, and I assume Orhun as well. Looking forward to see you next time, or in Discord right now.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for your awesome talk again. Hope to see you on stage again soon.
All right.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.